Welcome to your channel, ICT Bot, the channel for information and communications technology and simplifying everything new.
Welcome to the deep dive. So today, we're really getting into something fascinating, the story behind the world's most powerful non-nuclear bomb.
Yeah, it's a big one.
A huge one. We're talking 30,000 pounds, precision-guided. They call it the bunker buster.
The MOP.
Right, the MOP, and it's something only the U.S. military has. And, it's right at the center of all these intense talks about Iran's nuclear program.
Especially the potential for a U.S. strike.
Exactly. Targeting that Fordow facility specifically. So our mission here really is to cut through some of the noise.
Give you the clear picture.
Yeah, we'll look at what this MOP can actually do, why Fordow is such a critical target for it, the real difficulties in using it.
And all the strategy and diplomacy tangled up in them. So it's complicated.
Super complicated, but by the end, you'll understand not just what a bunker buster is, but why it's such a huge deal for global security right now, and what the decision makers are really wrestling with.
Okay, let's dive in.
Right. So this weapon, the GBU-57 E, the MOP Massive Ordnance Penetrator, it keeps getting called the world's most powerful non-nuclear bomb. What actually makes it so special, this 30,000-pound beast? And why only the U.S.?
Well, the key thing really is what it was designed for. The Air Force was pretty explicit. They said it was to accomplish a difficult, complicated mission.
Okay.
Reaching and destroying our adversaries' weapons of mass destruction located in well-protected facilities. So right there, that tells you a lot.
And the name Bunker Buster.
Exactly. It points straight at its job, hitting those hard and deeply buried targets. HDBTs, they call them. Bunkers, tunnels, anything way underground and fortified.
So it's not just heavy, it's about getting through things.
Precisely. It's not just the weight, it's the structural integrity, how it's built. And it has this complex fuse system. It's meant to punch through potentially hundreds of feet of rock or concrete.
Hundreds of feet.
Yeah, before it detonates. So the idea is to basically make the whole underground facility to just crumble from the inside.
Okay, so that's a capability nothing else really offers conventionally.
Right. It lets the U.S. potentially take out threats that used to seem untouchable,
Yeah.
which completely changes the game for anyone trying to hide WMD programs underground.
So given that specific purpose, hitting these super hard and deep targets, it naturally leads us to Iran. Our sources are pointing right at the Fordow facility as, well, the kind of place this weapon was made for.
Absolutely. When you look at the bigger picture, Fordow is, well, it's kind of an engineering feat in defensive terms.
Built into a mountain, right?
Deep inside a mountain, yeah.
Yeah.
Hundreds of feet down. It's a fortress, basically, built specifically to withstand attack.
And that's why it's so central.
Oh, yeah. Listen to what the Israeli ambassador, Yechiel Leiter, said. He stressed that the entire operation really has to be completed with the elimination of Fordow.
Because if it survives,
Iran's nuclear program could just pick up speed again, maybe even faster. So it really begs the question, why is the MOP the only thing that can realistically target it?
Yeah.
Especially since Israel's own bombs apparently aren't powerful enough.
Right. That's a key point in the sources. Israel just doesn't have that kind of deep penetration capability.
So the U.S. is the only game in town for that specific job.
Which is where the B-2 Spirit bombers come in, the stealth bombers. That's likely how the U.S. would deliver these MOPs.
Makes sense. You need to get past air defenses undetected.
And Colin Demarest over at Axios put it pretty bluntly. He said this combo B-2s and MOPs is about as potent as it gets shy of nuclear power.
That's quite a statement.
It is. So, okay, we've got this incredibly powerful weapon, the MOP, and this incredibly tough target, Fordow. But here's the thing. Owning the weapon is one thing.
Actually using it is another entirely.
Right, especially since, as our sources point out, the MOP has never been used in a real war. What are the actual practical challenges here, deploying this thing against Fordow?
Yeah, this brings up a really critical question about operational reality. Look at what Robert Pape, the military historian, suggested. He said destroying Fordow would likely take at least 2 bombs.
2 MOPs.
Yes, 2 MOPs, each hitting exactly the same spot.
Exactly the same spot. From B-2 dropping a 30,000-pound bomb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, when we talk about precision-guided for the MOP, we're talking sophisticated GPS, inertial navigation, aiming for accuracy within meters, which is incredible.
Go ahead.
But as Pape points out, even if the Air Force theoretically has that capability, it's never been done before in a real war.
So it's the first time under immense pressure against a target designed to resist it?
Precisely. It's not just dropping a bomb. It's this unprecedented need for synchronized pinpoint accuracy on a massive scale. And, the sheer audacity of it, plus all the unknowns of using it for the first time against a target like Fordow, it adds huge layers of complexity.
Okay, so with this powerful, untested weapon, this critical target, let's talk about the people making the calls, the leadership. Our sources say the U.S. president has been very involved. What do we know about his thinking? Any doubts about whether this would even work?
Yeah, it's fascinating, actually. The president's deliberation seems to hit on several key points. Officials are saying he wants to be absolutely sure an attack is, quote, really needed.
Needed, okay. And not just possible.
Right, and also that it wouldn't just drag the U.S. into some long, drawn-out war.
A major concern, obviously.
Huge. And crucially, would it actually destroy Iran's nuclear program for good? Not just, delay it.
So even if the Pentagon says yes, the MOP will work.
Well, the sources say that despite Pentagon officials expressing confidence, the president wasn't totally convinced, not necessarily about the bomb itself, but maybe the overall strategic wisdom or the guaranteed outcome. Yeah, he's apparently said things like he's not convinced yet that we're necessary, and he seems to like keeping options open, deciding at the last second. He thinks that ambiguity puts more pressure on Iran.
But the military is ready if the order comes.
Oh, yeah. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth made that clear. He basically said the Pentagon will be ready to execute it if told to.
Okay, so where does Israel fit into all this? They clearly see Fordow as priority number one. They worry if it's not dealt with, Iran's nuclear path remains open. What are their options if the U.S. doesn't strike?
Well, stepping back a bit, Israeli officials seem to mostly believe the U.S. will act eventually, but they've also dropped hints about other possibilities, things beyond just airstrikes.
Like what?
Well, both Prime Minister Netanyahu and Ambassador Leiter have sort of alluded to maybe a really risky commando raid.
Special forces against Fordow.
It sounds incredibly difficult, yeah. But sources say they told the U.S. administration, basically, if the bombs can't get deep enough, they might try to do it with humans. And they apparently referenced a past operation, smaller scale, where Israeli special forces did manage to destroy an underground missile factory in Syria. They got in and planted explosives.
So they're signaling they're determined to stop Fordow one way or another.
That seems to be the message. It really highlights how seriously they view that specific threat.
Okay, so while all these military options are on the table being weighed, our sources also talk about diplomatic efforts happening at the same time. What's the latest there? Is anyone actually talking?
Yeah, that raises the question, right? Is there another way? And apparently, yes. Even with all the military talk, the president himself has mentioned that Iran still wants to negotiate.
Really? Even now?
Seems so. They even proposed sending a delegation to the White House, according to the president. And the U.S. Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, he's been in direct contact, back-channel stuff, with Iran's Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi.
What's the message?
Pretty consistent. Let's talk. Simple as that.
And there are wider talks planned, too.
Yes. A multilateral meeting in Geneva. France, Germany, the UK, the EU foreign policy chief, all meeting with Araghchi.
But didn't Iran's UN mission tweet something like they wouldn't negotiate under pressure?
They did. Publicly, they tweeted they would not negotiate under duress. But interestingly, our sources say there are other indications the Iranians are willing to talk. So mixed signals, maybe?
Or different factions, perhaps?
Could be. But the key takeaway is the president keeps saying he hasn't shut the door on diplomacy.
Okay, so it's this incredibly complex picture. You've got immense military power, very specific threats, potential first-time use, leadership doubts, allied pressures, and ongoing diplomacy. What about the fallout if an attack does happen? What are the big risks?
Well, what really jumps out from the sources is a pretty stark warning. A U.S. attack would almost certainly trigger retaliation.
Against U.S. targets.
Yeah, U.S. bases, allies in the region, you name it. And the big fear is it could easily pull the U.S. into a long, messy conflict with Iran.
Not a limited strike, though.
Very unlikely to stay limited. As one U.S. official apparently put it, the end game for us is simple. No nuke, which shows that laser focus on the objective.
But the path to that objective is fraught with danger.
Exactly. It just highlights this incredibly tricky balance they're trying to strike.
Yeah.
How do you achieve that absolutely critical goal? No Iranian nuke, without triggering some kind of catastrophic, unforeseen escalation.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. The MOP itself, this unique weapon, Fordow, the fortress target, the really unprecedented challenge of actually using the MOP in combat.
And the viewpoints of the key players, which aren't always aligned.
Mm-hmm.
The president's caution, Israel's urgency, the Pentagon's readiness.
Right. And weaving through it all, these diplomatic back channels, it really shows you how military tech, political decisions, and quiet negotiations are all tangled together.
From designing a 30,000-pound bomb to quiet phone calls. It's quite the mix.
It really is. So here's something to think about as we wrap up. You have this immense, precise military tool, the MOP, aimed at a vital strategic target like Fordow. But you also have these diplomatic efforts, however fragile, and the undeniable risk of massive escalation if you use the weapon.
The known capability versus the unknown consequences.
Exactly. So how do you personally weigh the value of that military precision, that theoretical ability to take out the target against the potentially devastating, unpredictable human cost of actually doing it for the first time? And does having this powerful, unused weapon in the background ultimately help or hinder the constant search for a peaceful way out?
This is the end of our episode of ICT Bot. Don't forget to subscribe to ICT Bot to receive all the latest news. Thank you for following.